How do I go about suing Frump for emotional damage? He is violating my pursuit of happiness.
Does this mean that I get reparations from the queer movement who've completely ruined the reputation of actual LGBT people? Asking for a friend.
My kid's been exposed to a very progressive learning environment.
Imagine being someone that's surprised that this person said this while they're wearing a pink hat with ears, a Black Lives Matter /trans/gay mask with a protect girls not guns shirt.
Excuse me? Do I still have to pay taxes if I don't exist?
Yo, is our generation cooked? Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Why? Look at us.
Where's the lie, though? And you guys wonder why you think that gay marriage is about to be taken away from us. What have you yourselves done to make yourselves worry about this? Maybe because of stuff like this.
Shut this entire city down! Not on our watch. They will kick the trans people off the bus. They're kicking the indigenous people off the bus. Our intersex community off the bus. Revolution! Revolution!
Why was nobody worried about this potential change happening until the past 3 years or so? If you guys don't know, Obergefell versus Hodges is the landmark Supreme Court case that was heard on April 25th, 2015, that ruled that the 14th Amendment should require all states to license marriages between gay couples and to also recognize all marriages performed outside of the state, meaning that gay marriage was now legal nationwide, not just in certain states. A few days ago, a few legislators in Idaho asked the Supreme Court to revisit this case. The Idaho House voted 46-24. Although it does not carry force and effect of law, House Joint Memorial 1 says the Idaho legislator rejects the Supreme Court's decision in the case of Obergefell versus Hodges and calls on the U.S. Supreme Court to restore the natural definition of marriage, a union of one man and one woman. Okay, let's read that again. Although it does not carry the weight of law, so no, this is actually not overturning marriage equality, like so many people are lying and spewing the bullshit about on TikTok and whatnot. First of all, the Supreme Court has 9 justices. To hear a case against same-sex marriage or another landmark case, you have to have 4 justices even agree to hear it in the first place. And to overturn a ruling, 5 out of the 9, which would mean a majority of the Supreme Court justices, would have to agree to it. But even if the Supreme Court decided that they wanted to hear this case, would we be in trouble? We're gonna go over this piece by piece, okay? Because a lot of people are freaking out. There are currently 3 Supreme Court justices that were nominated by a Democratic president. Stephen Breyer, Sonia, I don't know how to pronounce that last name, and Elena Kagan. So I highly doubt that these more left-leaning people would vote against marriage equality. So let's go over the next 6. We have Chief Justice John Roberts, we have Clarence Thomas, we have Samuel Alito, we have Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. Justice John Roberts, who many people describe as like a moderate conservative, is known to not like messing around with any laws that have been in effect for a good number of years. He doesn't want to like rock the boat. He doesn't want to mess with anything, especially knowing that there will be major implications from changing laws. And knowing that 69% of all American people support same-sex marriage, I doubt this is something he would want to mess with. This is from an article I read recently. Roberts has since voted several times in support of the recognition of gay marriage and against discrimination of same-sex couples. And in 2020, the Supreme Court ruled that Title IX of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 protects LGBTQ Americans from workplace discrimination, which this more moderate conservative justice actually agreed with. So what about the other 4 justices? Take a look at what this law professor had to say about it.
Justice Thomas has been, I think, very strongly committed to reversing those precedents. He's mentioned this in a number of different contexts, so it's not surprising.
Barbara Atwood, a law professor at the U of A, says in reviewing Justice Thomas's concurring opinion, it seems he's the only one on the court with it.
But his voice is alone. Justice Kavanaugh also concurred in the opinion in Dobbs. And he said, no, we mean it. We're not going to re-examine these other rights. This case is really only about abortion.
Understandably so, but not. Because of the overturning of Roe versus Wade, people were going bananas, thinking that gay marriage was going to get overturned as well. But I think a really good point that has been made is that if these 9 justices abide by the Constitution, the 14th Amendment states, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abide the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. That's important. Justice Neil Gorsuch, who is considered by many to be more like libertarian, actually voted in favor of protecting LGBT equality in the workplace. Interestingly enough, along with Justice Roberts, who is considered to be more conservative leaning. Listen to this clip from MSNBC from 4 years ago.
Neil Gorsuch joined Chief Justice John Roberts, appointed by President Bush, Neil Gorsuch appointed by President Trump, and joining the 4 other justices, the liberal justices of the court, to render this decision. What do you make of that split?
Gorsuch, at the Supreme Court oral argument in the case, did seem somewhat sympathetic to the plaintiffs here, just based on the plain language of the statute. He's a very conservative guy. He did really recognize that the Supreme Court had interpreted the language in the past quite broadly, and there didn't seem to be a fair way to distinguish between prior precedents that had expansively read the scope of the people who are protected by Title VII.
In some ways, by some analysis, this was a little bit more important than marriage equality because, as he noted, not every gay person in this country wants to get married, but had this decision not come out, gay people in this country could be fired from their jobs without protection. That is no longer the case.
Okay, now we're down to like the last few justices who definitely lean more conservative. But still, taking all of this into account, this wouldn't likely be enough votes to overturn gay marriage, let alone even hear the case against it. If, by the very rare chance that gay marriage did get overturned, what would happen? My friend Brad explained this perfectly.
What would happen next? Would gay marriage become illegal across the country? Would existing marriages be null and void? No. That's not what would happen. Why? Well, because when Biden was president, but also many Republicans joined with him and voted for this, they passed bipartisan legislation called the Respect for Marriage Act. This legislation ensures that in the pretty unlikely, I think, event that the Supreme Court did overturn gay marriage, people would still have access to gay marriage nationwide, because states would be required to respect any valid marriage license issued by a state where it was allowed, including their own state in the past. So if Obergefell was overturned, states like Idaho, for example, could choose to stop issuing new gay marriage licenses, but they'd be required to respect the ones they'd already given out, and anybody who lived in Idaho could go to another state that allows gay marriage, get married, and then come back to Idaho, and Idaho would have to respect their marriage. That's what that legislation did.
Now, for the people worried about the Trump administration's new executive order stating that there are only 2 sexes or 2 genders, male and female, we're going to talk about that.
I've been thinking a lot about the impacts of the executive order that is, attempting to say there's only 2 sexes, and really just actually feels like it was written by people who haven't passed 7th grade science, which is also a concern in its own. But also the removal of the option to have an X gender marker on a new or a renewed passport.
Okay, so like everybody is still male or female. You either produce egg or you produce sperm. So regardless if you're identifying as non-binary, you're still legally sex-wise male or female. Here's what I said about this on TikTok. Make sure you follow me, by the way.
Trump's team recently changed the White House travel safety page from LGBTQIA+ to LGBT travelers, and TikTok is in absolute shambles. This is what the actual page says now. LGBT travelers can face special challenges abroad. Laws and attitude in some countries may affect safety and ease of travel. Many countries do not recognize same-sex marriage, and many countries also might only recognize the male and female sex markers in passports. And about 70 countries still consider consensual same-sex relationships a crime. The old version on the website actually pretty much says almost the exact same thing, but didn't actually tell people that if they have a X marker and not an M or an F on their passport, that they might have issues. So in a way, Trump's team actually made it more safe for certain people to travel. But I have some mixed thoughts about this, and I'm going to explain it all. The plus doesn't actually have to worry about international travel because the Q has already been represented in the LGB, and the plus, whether that's intersex or asexual or gender fluid, like nobody can tell if you're any of those said things. So how would that put you at risk? Personally, I do think the T should have had a separate page or a separate section, because with both administrations, the same issue can actually come to fruition. And that is if you do not pass as the sex or gender you identify as. For example, if you're a trans man and because of the new administration, you have an F on your driver's license or passport, you might travel abroad and they might be like, huh, it says female, but they look like a dude. But the same issue could have happened with the Biden administration. A transgender woman who fully looks male that traveled to another country that had female on their passport would also probably be like, huh. The ironic part of all of this is that queer activists are the ones that ruined this all. The truth is that this is a very unique issue, to say the least, and I think we still haven't fully figured it out. I think the best way to fix this would be putting a sex marker and a gender marker on passports.
Next, I want to talk about the Grammys for just a second. And no, I did not watch it. I have not watched TV, and I don't even own a TV. But I did watch a number of clips, of course, on YouTube from it. And although, like Lady Gaga, listen, I love you, ho. But, you know, you are in New York, you're Italian. We love that. But I completely disagree with you here.
Trans people are not invisible.
Number one, nobody is erasing trans people. Adults in this country are still completely able to fully transition or transition to whatever extent they want if they are adults. But what the new people in power have done is simply protect women and children. You see, people on the left in the past would have actually thought that that was a good thing. The reason for this current backlash and political pendulum swinging back to the right is because, in fact, you have not been invisible. You have not been made invisible. You have been more visible now than ever before. For the past 5 or 6 years, the queer community, not the gay community, or maybe some gay people, but mostly like the TQ+, okay, let's be real, has been more annoying, more narcissistic, more entitled, more controlling than ever before. And that's why people are sick of you. Not only were these people screaming at waiters or harassing waiters for misgendering them and making money off of TikTok while doing so. Hi, Lily Tino. They were fighting for males who were convicted of sex crimes to be placed in women's safe spaces. They have been anti-science, claiming that people can change their sex, that sex isn't even real, that gender is made up, that you don't need gender dysphoria to be trans, and that same-sex attraction is not real because gender is fluid. I actually interviewed a ton of people last week at South Florida Pride, asking them which letter of the LGBTQ+ community they would kick out. And guess what? Overwhelmingly, I knew that they would say this, that's why I filmed the video, people said the Q, because of the horrible ideology and bullshit that they've been spewing the past 5 years.
Oh, I'm terrified. That's scary. I want to move to Canada.
I am trans.
Yes, so I'm gender fluid. So that means that sometimes I feel like presenting female and sometimes I feel like presenting male or non-binary.
So how do you kind of feel about Trump saying there were two genders yesterday?
Well, that's just like false. Gender and sex are different things. So gender, there's a huge spectrum. If you say like there's two sexes, like I suppose that has a little bit more validity with how sexes are defined right now, but still there's a lot of gray area. So he's just not very knowledgeable about the stuff he's talking about. As like someone who's part of the LGBTQ+ community, having Trump as a president again makes me feel insecure. It makes me feel threatened, and it also makes me concerned about the future of our country.
Okay, so you're not trans. You don't have gender dysphoria. You don't have any signs of medically transitioning, and just like to present more masculine or feminine, which is literally what like lesbians and gay men have been doing for, I don't know, the past 100 years. Maybe not the past 100 years, but at least the past like 50 years or so. By the way, I'm not surprised that you are a, you know, around 23-year-old-ish female, white, upper middle class, college-esque student, probably living in a more left-leaning city. And if you are going by your definition of gender, which means how you dress, how you present yourself, Trump and his team don't give a shit how you dress, how you present yourself. Like, they're not trying to take away your right to freedom of expression. They're not even trying to take away your right to self-identify. What they are doing is taking away your right for everyone else to have to treat you the way you see yourself. He is simply stating that everybody is scientifically, factually, male or female. How you express that sex or your gender is another story, and of course can lead to other issues like people entering women's spaces where they don't belong, that we had kind of figured out how to deal with over the past 10 years up until the last 2 or 3. And guess what? Also in the past, we left the kids alone, okay? Stop doing shit like this.
Told me, Sammy's not a she. Oh, and then they told me, nah. And then he told me, and Sammy's a gender. A as in Sammy doesn't have a gender orientation? Sammy's just the person. Just use Sammy's name. Okay, and then Sammy.
And please step away from that big, you know, that meme that has like the 2 buttons? Please step away from the one that says everybody that's white is racist, because I just can't with these people anymore.
Black and indigenous people of color. Black and indigenous people of color. Lesbian, gay, bi, transgender, and queer. Lesbian, gay, bi, transgender, and queer. Asian American Pacific Islander.
Again, once again, an under 30-year-old white female who probably lives in like Tacoma, Washington, or Seattle, Washington, or Vancouver, Canada. Like, you can't make this shit up. It is just textbook at this point. But let me know what you guys think of everything we talked about today. Other than that, make sure you subscribe if you are new. We are about to hit 800,000 followers, which is crazy because I've had this YouTube channel for 15 years now, which is even crazier to think about. I've been making content on it for like 13 years, consistently, but 15 years is just nuts. Thank you to everybody who has been supportive and will be supportive and was supportive. I appreciate all of you. Other than that, I will see you guys back here next Sunday with a brand new video. Until then, I love you. Keep calling out the bullshit. Bye.